Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. This is something I'm excited to talk about, and a new guest to research this subject with. I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, we launched with an episode that we entitled, Who Brought Kirk Douglas Back from the Dead? And it sounds like a silly topic and a silly title for a show, but I have a very clear memory, as I've mentioned on the show, of Kirk Douglas dying. I talked about that on the show and began getting emails from around the world of people that remember the exact same story. Not just his stroke, which everybody knew about, but the fact that he died shortly thereafter. And we remembered interviews, specific things that were said, even outfits that Michael Douglas wore at the funeral. And yet, Kirk Douglas is still very much alive. I think he just turned 100 years old. Co-wrote a book a few years ago called Stroke of Luck with his son, Michael Douglas. But how can so many of us have this memory? Then Fiona Broome coined the expression the Mandela Effect, very similar to Kirk Douglas's story of everybody believing that Nelson Mandela had passed away while serving a prison time. But we know that that's not what happened. But yet there is a huge section of our planet that believes that Mandela truly died long before his actual death. And as we open this Pandora's box, many different things began to make themselves known, from logo registrations and famous characters. The Berenstain or Berenstain Bears. What do you believe? Now that has gotten more and more interesting as we go along, because they have actually made typos within their own product. There are videotapes where it says Berenstain Bears on the outside, and when you pull the VHS cassette out, it says Berenstain Bears right on the cartridge. And there have been other toys and items like that where they have misspelled their own product right on the package twice. One is Berenstain, one is Berenstein. So that may be the answer to that aspect of the Mandela issue. And I wanted to get into this deeper. So many of you write to me on a regular basis saying, we love the paranormal, love all these different aspects of the show, but let's look more into the Mandela Effect and find out what this is. What are some other beliefs out there? What do other people believe is happening? So I've had many of you not only reach out to me with ideas and topics, but also guests to include on the show. And tonight we're going to talk with Laurie MacDonald, a clinical hypnotherapist and an abduction researcher. She's one of 27 regression therapists listed on the Mutual UFO Network's mental health referral list for abduction regression. She's also a consultant to the research committee FREE, the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. She has recently been elected the president of the organization OPUS, Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. She has some very interesting insights and thoughts regarding the Mandela Effect, and she's here to share these with us this evening. Thank you so much for joining us, Laurie.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, Dave.
You heard during the opening I was talking about how this came to us a number of years ago and how it opened up this doorway to people sharing their stories of these memories. One of the most powerful we got was from a listener who said, Dave, this hit me right between the eyes because I'm the one in the office who always gets the birthday cards and the anniversary cards and the sympathy cards. And she said, and I know one of our employees came in and she talked about being pregnant and how exciting it was. And, it had gone for quite a while. And then I remember asking her how things were going with this pregnancy. And she said, well, what do you mean? Well, having lost the last one, are there any things that the doctors are doing differently this time? And she said, I've never been pregnant before. And this woman specifically remembered her being pregnant and losing the baby, and she was even the one that went out and got the sympathy card that the entire office signed and gave to her.
Wow.
But yet here's this woman telling her, I've never been pregnant before. This is my first pregnancy. And it luckily went to term and everything was fine. But these false memories, and I don't even know if I can call them false memories because we don't know where they're coming from. And are they truly false? Are they from parallel universes, alternate realities, alternate lives? this is such a fascinating aspect, and it is gaining more and more exposure. Everything from song lyrics to movie lines that people have sworn are said one way, and when you go back and review it, are nothing like that. That to me is a really interesting aspect of this. Maybe you could talk to us coming from the clinical side of things and understanding the brain. Are we that fallible? Can we make mistakes that much that a whole section of the planet remembers things completely differently?
No, actually we can't. It's certainly possible for people to have somewhat of a joint mismemory, but this is the huge difference between a normal mismemory and one that would be considered a Mandela effect. Mm-hmm. So a regular person is corrected. They misremembered something. They've been given some evidence to show the contrary. And they go, oh, okay, and they shrug it off. A person who is experiencing the Mandela effect is actually experiencing a cognitive dissonance. They're absolutely shocked out of a belief system, and they can't comprehend how the evidence being presented to them is authentic and true. But what I might suggest is that both realities are true, and that it's not a matter of right or wrong. Did this happen or did it not happen? It appears more that both things happened, and that it is more of an effect on the consciousness. It may point to multidimensionality. We hear a lot of people talking about that in the ascension movement and in spiritual growth. The problem, though, with the Mandela effect is if our consciousness is propelled forward into a parallel dimension, we're still in the third dimension, and the idea is to ascend moving higher into a fourth, fifth, and so on. So that would be a sort of a pitfall of the Mandela effect. Another sort of pitfall, too, is even though it seemingly is a large amount of people affected by it, in comparison to the world population, it's actually quite small, less than 1% or around the 1% mark. And that might mean that it is, in fact, people holding on to a parallel universe or a parallel memory. I have memories of both things when it comes to it. And I remember it changing. And I thought, that's a strange change for them to make. I wonder why they would do that. And then only to find out later that the change wasn't made. It was always like that. But there are ways to help us out, those mandected, by getting a little bit of information together, pulling together some research. I suggest using the dark net and checking into things like the United States Patent Office, going back to the original patent dates and seeing the names they were used. I was able to pull that trademark registration and patent numbers on the product Febreze, where it was in fact spelt with 2 E's, the way many people do remember it. So I felt quite satisfied finding that, but, it doesn't prove it to everybody else. For me, it was more than enough. And I think one of the other things with the Mandela effect is people are quite certain that the change was made, it's drastic to them. And if it's that drastic, it's not going to be exactly the same for, 5 million other people.
Now, as an example of one pop culture reference, there is, Laurie, that one of the most famous lines off misquoted is, "Play it again, Sam," from the old movie Casablanca. Mm-hmm. And now that's something that was passed around for a long time, right? Play it again, Sam. That was never what was said, but people misquote it because they remember the gist of the moment, but they may not remember the entire line. And in the movie, right, what he actually said was, "You played it for her, now you can play it for me. Play it." And that was more of what the line was, but he never said, "Play it again, Sam." Although I think there was a Woody Allen movie called that, and all of these different things come to mind. So I know that we are fallible in the sense that we can believe something is one way or another, And, look, music lyrics are another great example. There's been books out there that have been bestsellers because they talk about how, people misinterpret lyrics. I remember one of the most famous books was Excuse Me While I Kiss This Guy, which was the name of the book. And that was a quote from the Jimi Hendrix song. And, misquoted, I should say. So we do make mistakes, but it seems that in some of these instances that there is such a dramatic break from the belief system. And yet, when you run into people that have one thought or another on it, they're vehement that no, it was either no, it's always been this way, or no, it has not. That's what's so strange to me. You don't really find people in the middle that go, I just don't know. I just don't remember.
No, that's true. They're very emotionally invested in the outcome, especially with other iconic movies like The Wizard of Oz, Scarecrow having a gun. Scarecrow now has a gun in The Wizard of Oz. And
I've seen this movie a bajillion times. Where does the Scarecrow have a gun?
Okay, so they've gone into Oz, and the great and powerful Oz tells them that they need to go to the Wicked Witch's castle and bring back the broomstick. So as they're entering the haunted forest, there's a sign, and it says, haunted forest, then I would turn back if I were you. Well, he turns around, and he's nervous, and the Scarecrow and the lion turn around together, and the Scarecrow is pointing a pistol, and the Scarecrow has a gun. So I was born and raised in Canada, and we only had like 2 or 3 TV stations, and most of them were usually in French. But when The Wizard of Oz came on every single year, as it did, we watched it, and I must have seen it 50 times or many more than that, because I've watched it with my own kids and so forth. But I know that I don't remember the Scarecrow having a gun.
No, and that's something I'm going to have to talk to my daughter about. She's a wizard. 2 of my daughters are Wizard of Oz-aholics, and the memory of the Scarecrow ever having a gun, that's not there. Now, another huge one we can't ignore is the line from Empire Strikes Back. Spoiler alert for those of you that haven't seen it. Many people, including myself, remember very clearly during the big reveal of the movie, Darth Vader telling him, Luke, I am your father. And Luke's response screaming, no, it's not possible. And we remember how that whole thing plays out. But that isn't the way it is if you go watch the movie now. Now, that's a tough one because George Lucas has mucked with the movie so many times in different variations and varieties of the movie. Maybe it was there at one point. In his subsequent releases, it has been altered forever, but I'm not sure. The line he actually says is, no, I am your father.
Right. Well, I've been collecting unopened VHS versions of the movies. I did get the Star Wars. I did get Wizard of Oz. I've ordered lots of things so that I could watch them myself. And yeah, absolutely, on the older, non-digitally enhanced or without any modifications whatsoever, the line is clear. Yeah, no, I am your father. But my son, who was a Star Wars fanatic, absolutely would run around the house with his hands cupped over his mouth and playing Star Wars, and they would act it out. And, he said Luke. So it's very interesting. But
right,
there is...
not no, I am your father. Everybody always remembers it as Luke. I am your father. And I think he says something about search your feelings and you'll know it to be true and something along those lines. But yeah, that's another one that's just kind of a mind trip.
Well, in Moses being depicted by Michelangelo with horns, now I don't really ever remember that. I can't, say that I'm a big art buff, but I like sculptures. I've always been interested in history, and I've looked at a lot of statues, but was quite surprised when I was doing a little research and saw that Moses now has horns in the famous depiction I don't remember Michelangelo doing that, but they're clear as can be. So there's been major changes in the Bible. People say in anatomy and even in geography. So that's quite interesting. It really opens a lot of doors when we're looking at the Mandela Effect. So sure, we see that, we can, there's archives that you can search to get all sorts of information. One of the big Mandela Effects was, Oscar Mayer hot dogs. And is it, Mayer? Well, we know that to be mayor. I remembered it being Oscar Mayer. And
now, see, that's one of those too. I remember the song very well when I was a kid with the Baloney song, and I remember it being Mayer. So the Meyer, just when I look at it, it's like an affront to my eyes. That's not how I recall it, but I have friends that will want to throw down with me because they know it was Meyer.
Well, I remember. As far as Meyer goes, you can tell your friends that I did some old newspaper research. So what I was looking for were circulars that were put into the newspaper around, say, the 4th of July when something like hot dogs would go on sale. So I pulled up the old newspaper ads from IGA and Kroger's and the Piggly Wiggly and grocery stores across America. And 50% or so said Meyer, especially the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we see that there is residual evidence. Companies like Kroger's don't make mistakes in their circulars for what's going, their whatever's going to be on sale. They don't make mistakes like that. And
especially if they're using the original logos. They would be given the logos to place in the ads, correct? It's not like they were creating their own. Absolutely.
There's a picture of the product, beside the lettering. And yes, it's Meyer. I find people that are from the East Coast are more adamant that it's Mayer. No, I lived here. It was, but there is a suggestion that a certain percentage of the people that are awakening to a belief that the consciousness can reside both inside and outside of a person, sort of existing beyond time and space, that there is more of a multiverse. It only makes sense that something like the Mandela Effect, where we would have more of an alpha conscious awareness, we could be aware of more than one reality playing out at a time. And that's very possible. I've even had my own strange Mandela effects. Not lots of them, but things where, well, for instance, I've just spent the last 3 months in Asia. And while I was in Cambodia, I decided I needed some cash, went to the ATM machine, and they're like, no, that's not your PIN number. Like, what? I certainly know my PIN number. And back and forth. So I had to just take my card and leave for fear that the machine would confiscate it. But I ended up calling the bank, and they said, no, that's not your number. And now I see on my bank statements that, especially on a couple of my online accounts, the spelling of my last name, it's no longer a capital D. It was changed to a small d. Even Skype, when I fired up Skype today earlier, I went, what? How come MacDonald is spelled with a small d? It's not how I spell my name. It also changed in some official mail that I received. I don't know how to explain that, because there was a time when I actually addressed the bank and said, how come you're addressing me all in capital letters? You're talking to me like I'm a corporation. And so I was very clear on how it was printed in my mail. So the Mandela Effect, certainly is the topic of the century. We thought that the extraterrestrials was a hard thing to swallow. That's nothing compared to understanding, no, not so much understanding, but comprehending the multiverse. That's when we're really pushing past the limits of what our conscious awareness or conscious expansion possibilities are. And when we can see more than one reality, more than one timeline playing out, that we are in control of where our consciousness resides, then we're becoming more empowered beings. And this may just be a natural evolutionary step. I did watch a couple of videos where one said if you have the Mandela effect, for sure if you're talking about it or sharing information about it, you're probably going to be monitored, because the powers that be might be suspicious as to why you didn't take to the new program.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. So it doesn't behoove anybody to allow us to have this multidimensional perspective.
See, I think to me, it seems that there has to be some kind of trigger mechanism in that is reverberating and kind of creating this temporal pond ripple effect in our realities, and why some people remember things so distinctly. But I also know, and let's face it, it's hard for most people at this point, Laurie, to remember a time before the internet, right?
Right.
And since the internet, we are fed such a nonsense string of crap on a daily basis that, how many times have we seen some celebrity died only to find out that it was from some spoof website? Well, and a lot of people get their headlines and news information from quick scrolls through Facebook. So they remember seeing Jim Carrey killed in a train accident. Wow, that's crazy, unbelievable. And let's face it, he's not somebody that's been in any real movies lately. He's not somebody that's gaining a lot of attention in the news. And then when he does pass away, everybody's like, wow, I thought he was dead already. So there are those mistakes. Here's a really interesting Mandela effect that's taking place.
Maybe they plant those, though. Maybe they get these news stories out there and say, oh, this celebrity died, because they see them flexing back and forth. Jim Carrey, the example that you used, he's on a major spiritual path. He's into the raising of his Kundalini, and all he's talking about is the M theory in physics, which is actually directly related to the Mandela effect. So they could be planting these stories for a couple of reasons. One, to emotionally control the masses, to see how much you can distract them with a bunch of crap, but also to beguile and mislead, to get them to be turned away from, so you read about a celebrity death. Well, there is a lot of theories out there with different types of cloning and so forth, saying they practice on such celebrities. There's artificial intelligence that has created facial features that look like real people, and they create profiles for them. They're doing enormous amount of psychological testing on us. Usually, in the end, it turns out for money. To generate money, it's usually, some type of skilled marketing art that they try to see. But when people are talking about, this celebrity died, well, maybe, they are planting that to create additional confusion, suspecting that there'll be some people who have this Mandela effect. I personally do remember Nelson Mandela dying. I remember him dying in prison. Right. I remember being shocked and feeling that it was somehow justice wasn't served for him to have died in prison when there might have been so much he could do. I remember his wife with an emotional plea in South Africa. I think she was in Johannesburg. And I stood in my living room and watched the breaking news, but then I also remember, and you can pull up videos on this. It further corroborates the evidence that Mandela died in the early 90s, 91, because former President George W. Bush, during a presidential news conference in 2007, he declared Mandela is dead. Sudan killed all of the Mandelas. So there are many, not many, about a handful of this news conference that was in 2007 by George W. Bush, as saying that Nelson Mandela had died. And then, of course, we see that Obama is taking pictures at the funeral. And why do we remember it? Because he did an inappropriate selfie at what was to be Nelson Mandela's funeral. So now I've seen him die twice myself.
That's crazy, right? I mean, how can this be going on? And especially if you're having multiple ripple effects. You know, another one that comes to mind, and this one blew me away, because I would swear on the lives of each of my children, I am a huge Beatles fan. I love the Beatles. And there is the very famous song, With a Little Help from My Friends, right? Mm-hmm. Ringo's well-known song. And I can tell you, without a doubt, the lyric is, what would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? And I think anybody that just heard that, I would sing it, but we all know my voice is not worth singing. I make Ringo sound talented. Right? But we all know that it's, what would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? However, if you go right now, I challenge you, go find it, folks. Go listen to the song. It is not that lyric. It's ridiculous. You got to go hear it for yourself. I don't even want to tell you what the lyric actually is, because first of all, it makes no sense. The word that's replaced makes no sense for the sentence being sung. But that one really shook my paradigm, and that was a newer kind of find for me in the whole world. Let me hit a few other ones, and then I want to start talking about some of the other aspects of this. As we said, Mandela being one of the big ones. Oscar Mayer, how do you remember it? Was it M-E-Y-E-R or M-A-Y-E-R? All right, here's one. Now, I was never a fan of the show. It starred Sarah Jessica Parker and was about a single gal and her three besties living in New York. And they set a lot of trends. The TV show was beloved. They came out with, I think, 2 or 3 movies since then. And I know it. The name of the series was Sex in the City.
Yes, it was. But it was Sex in the City. That's right.
It's not. If you go try to purchase it or look it up, it is Sex and the City.
Yeah, that was one of the ones I saw change. I went, why did they change that? It doesn't make as much sense either. That's one of the things you'll see with the Mandela Effect. But you're saying with the Beatles, in fact, one of the other Mandela effects is that it wasn't the Beatles, it was just Beatles.
Right. Right, yeah, that's another weird aspect. Here's another one, right? This is another song everybody knows the lyrics to. We Are the Champions by Queen, right? Mm-hmm. And if you remember, at the very end of the song, right, when he's going out, he does that kind of drifting, no time for losers, because we are the champions. And then there's a small pause, and then he sings Of the World. Mm-hmm. Go listen to it right now, folks. There is no Of the World at the end of that song. It just ends. It'll drive you insane. That was brought up to me by my buddy, Eric. His daughter is big into the Mandela Effect, and we started talking about these, and I threw the Beatles lyric to him. Now, what's really interesting is he actually went and saw Ringo Starr and his all-star band perform, and you know what? Ringo sings, what would you do if I sang out of tune? He doesn't say the incorrect lyric. So there's actual video of him singing the way we remember the song. But yet all of the albums and every page that you go look up the lyrics, it is changed. But this one, I mean, we are the champions. How could we all be so wrong that it ends with Of the World and then that's not part of the song anymore? That one baffled me. Here's another one. I grew up loving the game Monopoly. I'm over it now. But I grew up loving Monopoly. I used to play it all the time. And everybody remembers Rich Uncle Pennybags. And he's running across. And I don't know. In your memory, Laurie, does he have a monocle or does he not have a monocle?
Yes, he did have a monocle in my memory. We played board games. We must be near the same age. We played board games when I was young quite a bit. And yes, I do remember that.
Right.
You know, but there are so many strange Mandela effects, and we wonder, well, what is the significance of, once he has the monocle, now he doesn't have the monocle, what does this mean? Is there any relevance to it? How does it affect us? But it does affect us because it's pushing us to open our minds to a bigger reality. You said you had girls. They probably know the one about Snow White, mirror, mirror on the wall.
Right. Right. Okay. Now this will blow people away. And we've heard it recited in many other movies since then. And how do you go about changing such a major thing? And if you remember in Snow White, when the evil queen is seeking her counsel from her ghostly friend in the mirror, she would say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And then the mirror would tell them, "Well, you are, queen." Or it said, "Well, you used to be, but Snow White's pretty damn hot, so you're kind of slipping into second place." And again, I'm paraphrasing. That's neither the real one or the Mandela Effect version. But the actual one is magic mirror on the wall.
Right.
And I'm just curious. And you guys send me your emails. I want to know, what do you think? What do you remember? Do you remember mirror, mirror on the wall? Or do you remember magic mirror on the wall?
Well, I ordered the 1939 book, and the book says magic mirror. I couldn't believe it. Right. But the book says magic mirror on the wall.
How about Looney Tunes?
There's a lot of residual evidence with that one that shows that it was the 00.
Right, but do you remember it as Looney Tunes with the OONS for tunes, or TUNES? Which one did you remember?
Well, I remember it like a cartoon. It was TOON, and the tunes, TUNES, didn't really come out until much later, sort of the iTunes thing. But these cartoons predate all of that.
Right.
And there's still residual evidence you can find with Tiny Toons. Mm-hmm. And it's TOONS that hasn't switched yet to the TUNES.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And then, of course, here's another one, folks, that'll baffle you, because how many times have we all recited the line, "Life is like a box of chocolates," right, from Forrest Gump? But if you go back, he says life was like a box of chocolates. And that's not it. I remember that movie because, again, that was another one. I love that movie. I've seen it a bajillion times. And he would say, "Mama always said life is like a box of chocolates." It would make no sense to say Mama always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you'll get, right? So it's strange to me that again, we do misremember things. I know that for a fact as a father. I misremember things. My children misremember things all the time. When I tell them to clean their room and they forgot, they thought I told them to not clean their room.
No, yeah, that's misremembering and being affected, really experiencing that cognitive dissonance are two different things. But what about McDonald's, the fast food place? A lot of people remember McDonald's, MAC. Mm-hmm. Which one do you remember?
I always remember it being MAC and then capital DONALDS. I remember that on the signs. Which
kind of makes sense because they have a Big Mac,
right?
Not a Big Mick.
That's right. So there was,
so that's a kind of bleed through there.
How about Kit Kat, folks? Don't look it up, but just email me. What do you remember? And email me, Dave@darknessradio.com. Does Kit Kat have a dash between Kit and Kat? What do you remember? Does it have a dash or does it not have a dash? Answer. Send me your answer first, then go look it up or look at a package. It's close to Halloween. See what you can find. We need to take a break. We'll come back. There's more mind-numbing thoughts revolving around this. And maybe after the show, you go check out all of these lyrics and songs, because I really don't want you to stop the show to go check it out. But jot these notes down and come back. We'll be back. We've got more coming your way here on the best in Paranormal Talk Radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
Hey, welcome back to Out of the Darkness Paranormal Pop Radio. I'm your host, Frankie Hansen, and we're discussing the Monroe Effect with our guest, Lindsay McEnroe, this evening. Lindsay, thank you for being here with us. This is just a fascinating topic. I know I'm getting so many emails about it already and questions, people's own experiences. When did this start to take notice and become a part of your paradigm?
Okay, well, it started for me with those Berenstein Bears. Back a few years ago. That was the one that really caught my attention.
Now, before it became part of the lexicon and people talking about this on a regular basis, I'm just curious, had you had experiences like this at any other points in your life? These false memories, these misremembered segments, or did it only start to open up and occur once the Mandela Effect and that whole concept started to really become pop culture?
Well, for me, prior to the Mandela Effect, I was already noticing a lot of anomalous activity, not so much paranormal, but more interdimensional or extraterrestrial. And once in a very lucid dream, I ran into myself.
What?
Yeah, I ran into myself at an airport. It was all very significant. It was like on another plane. And, it was a replica of me, maybe a little shinier, but certainly I had on my favorite leather coat, and very strange. So that had me wondering and pondering parallel universes way before the Mandela Effect.
And obviously we were having a little fun with people when we came back from the break. This is Beyond the Darkness. Just trying to give that little mental hiccup to everybody as they're going along. Listen, you do a lot of work in regression therapy, where people seem to have had lost time when they believe that they were abducted by aliens. Tell me in all honesty, as a clinical hypnotherapist, can you manipulate people's memories? Can you plant false memories truthfully, or does the brain reject them?
No, you can plant a false memory. That's very possible. You can plant any seed in the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind likes repetition. And so if you continue with that same type of thought process, it becomes absorbed into the consciousness. The subconscious mind does not have a filter for truth or reality. It just receives and accepts everything it's told. There's no critical thinking. The critical thinking and judgmental aspect is only in the beta brainwave, the conscious mind. So the subconscious mind is easily manipulated. And so as a hypnotherapist, high integrity and total awareness, really hanging and holding in that energy during a session is imperative, is so that you don't plant a seed or lead in any way.
And it's not as hard as you think, folks. I've called it the Jedi mind trick for many years, where if you look people in the eyes and you say to them, no, this is what I did, many times they don't remember. No, you told me I could have Friday off. Oh, yeah, I remember that. And if you say it convincingly enough, people will bend to your will, and they're suddenly supplanted with a different memory because you've kind of overridden, especially in today's time and culture. We're so distracted by technology, we're so distracted by phones, we're so distracted by everything but what we should be focusing on, which is life, that it's probably easier now than ever to confuse people and give them false thoughts and memories. Are you seeing that at all in your practice?
Well, I've seen screen memories, and that is in fact a false memory. But that's a memory implanted deliberately to conceal an actual experience. So, it can be done. Just in regular advertising and marketing, they plant ideas, creating a desire and making you think that you want this, making you think that you need that. So, you can make a person do that, but it's not ethical.
Right, but it is possible to shift people's memories and do that. When you're doing a regression on someone who believes that they've been abducted, how do you stay objective and walk them through it without giving them any kind of lead? And now that we've heard about this in the culture for so long, how do you truly get an untainted person who hasn't heard of the bright light and the metal tables and the aliens? I mean, how do you know that you're getting a true account which would match all these other accounts as opposed to something that they may have read in a book or an article at some point, and that memory is being kind of overridden? Well,
verbiage and emotion are two strong indicators But when a person is in an altered state and I've done my job right, I've hypnotized them, I've brought them into a different conscious state. When we're in the subconscious, becoming open and receptive, moving into this exploratory to go back to a time when they had this experience, I don't find it difficult to hold their energy. It's very important that they are able to express it. But, yeah, you know, it's how they describe it. The truth is, nobody wants to be abducted by aliens. People really, really struggle with this. They don't want to have had any association. They don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want to be made fun of. People have lost their jobs when talking about authentic experiences that they've had. You know, what's really more important is trying to look at the experience and see how it affects them, okay? If they believe that they had face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact with an extraterrestrial, that they were taken aboard a craft, that experiments were done, whatever it is, okay, that's their reality. So using that as their reality, what's your next empowered step? Where do we take that? Where do we go with this? How does it affect your consciousness? What does this mean to you? Does it challenge your reality? Do you believe now in the existence of non-human beings? Are you open to the idea that life can exist outside of a carbon-based third-dimensional body, you know, in a 5 consensus reality? I mean, we have to look at reality, and it's their perspective. And so my job is to help them manage the experience, to lend later, after an experience has been, you know, identified. I can lend information from the years of experience and the different categories that I've created, and the profiling that I've done on, well, now the subject becomes a witness and their experience becomes documented. And we look at the perpetrator, the extraterrestrial, and profile them, trying to find out the agenda, how they communicate, what to anticipate, where their weaknesses.
The only reason I, again, wanted to get into that with the whole aspect of abductions and thought process and how people are overlaid. Do you ever start peeling back the regression on this and the memories only to uncover that there's something, this alien abduction may not truly be an alien abduction, but something more nefarious like Men in Black overlaying an alien abduction scenario in the mind? What do you do when you come across that?
Absolutely, that happens. Not everybody who thinks they were abducted by aliens actually were. Sometimes they've had an experience that weren't aliens, but were something more of a lower astral entity like a demon or a jinn. And there are entities like MIB who are threatening and trying to manipulate you and the situation. Yeah, sometimes that happens. Deal with it the same exact way. We do peel away to them what is real and what isn't. And, you know, I can tell, too, when a person's starting to come out, they begin to breathe different, they swallow different, they use words like I think instead of I'm seeing. You're either there, you're back in the memory, or you're remembering it. And those are two different energies. So you have to be very aware. You know, awareness is a big key here on whatever consciousness you're coming from. But, there are certainly screen memories that are military or my lab abductees, and they are taken by, you know, the face begins to melt away from what might look like a hybrid, gray reptoid to more of a scientist in a lab coat, or the feeling of military personnel. People will say that they get the idea that they're not, you know, in a normal place, that they might be on a craft, or maybe they're underground, but they get the idea that they're in a contained facility. Whether it's a contained facility on a craft or underground, they can't say for sure, but I hear those two things come up many times. You know, I also facilitate in the Sacramento Alien Abduction and Contactee Support Group, and we have these monthly meetings. I have over 200 members. I take 25 to 30 at a time. All of these people are having different levels of experience with extraterrestrials. It's not all, abduction. Some say they're receiving information being downloaded, streamed right into their mind, and they can't stop it. This information has an emotional impact on their mind and their body, and they can't stop it. So it's more like a consciousness hijacking to me. I think that that's more of a consciousness hijacking than a download of information.
Right.
And so, there's always, we have to be aware. If someone's hearing a voice in their head, don't assume that you're a contactee. We do have to rule out things like auditory hallucination and schizophrenia. There are other mental illnesses where people suffer from that, drugs. So we have to look and see what's going on and use the best possible discernment prior to doing the regression work. I get a lot of people who have had a lot of really amazing experiences, but when they have to do with extraterrestrials, what I really like to emphasize to anyone involved in that or anyone who's had an experience is really remember that half of the equation is human. And hue is an ancient word for light. We use hue today to measure different saturations and depths of light. And man is short for manifestation, to become embodied or to be made physical. So a human is a light embodied entity, and any association with any other type of entity, they're coming to us for a reason, and we have to understand our personal power, our creative energy, our sovereign ground, and not give in to any extraterrestrials if there's some great savior, because in fact it's we who will save ourselves. We're far more powerful in the co-creative energy than maybe most people realize. What we can do and what the human potential is and what we're capable of has been greatly underestimated, as well as our spirit. Right now, the population, America, is sort of the walking wounded. They're not really growing up and recovering from old emotional scars. They need to clear up that emotional baggage so that they can begin to step into their true self, becoming authenticated, living in a reality, identifying reality, and then perhaps even creating the reality that they're most comfortable living in. So there's lots that we can do, but I see people with their face in some type of monitor or phone or a laptop or a tablet. It's like this black magic monitor has got them sucked in, and it absolutely has an effect on the brain waves. And so we have to be really conscious of where we place our attention and why. Why we want to place our attention there. Really, people get sucked into these devices, and sucked in is not an exaggeration. Your energy truly is connecting. Everything's a two-way street with energy. Has to go both ways, and so we allow ourselves to be pulled into it. But this is a time of change. It's a miraculous time in history. We see things like the Mandela Effect, I believe it's 4% of the world population. 280 million people have come forward with extraterrestrial abduction experiences, and that is 4% of the world population. And that's actually considerably high when you look at what's going on. So everybody's mind is getting an opportunity right now to take another look at reality and maybe push the boundaries and tap into that higher part of the mind that most people secretly know is there. If you're living the life that you want to live, if you're not living the way you saw yourself, the way that would make you happy and satisfied, if everything you're doing is outside of yourself, then you're sort of out of balance and not looking at reality the way that you could be looking at it.
Do you believe that, can we shut down the Mandela effect? Can we shut down these ripple effects of different memories through hypnosis or through meditation, so that we're just in line with the reality of this earth, this reality right here that we're currently speaking in?
Well, NASA scientists tell us that this reality, the third dimension, as we know it, is drifting away. It's falling apart, that we're in fact in the higher third dimension, moving into the fourth dimension, and that this will be a short-lived time. NASA scientists tell us that the universe is expanding. And if that's the case, maybe it's time for us to look at a multidimensional existence. We've been told all along through all types of spirituality and religion that we're mind, body, and spirit. And I'm sure you've talked to many people who have had near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences. When you see that you exist outside the body and you still maintain your consciousness and your identity, then you're already realizing that the world and what you're accepting as reality is limited. And that when we push those limitations away, the humans are maybe ready for that next step in our personal and collective evolution. That if we take this next step, maybe this is natural. We have all kinds of dormant DNA that must be being, needed for something. All kinds of strands that they used to call junk DNA. I don't believe we have any junk DNA. I think that there's a purpose for all of it, and that as we grow and evolve, our frequency and vibrations change. Our place in the universe changes. In fact, when I grew up, used to love Carl Sagan. I was a star watcher my entire life, and I remember him showing how we lived on the outside of the Milky Way in the Orion Spur, that this is where we are, but you can check that, and that's not the truth anymore. Then now they say that the planet is more in the middle of the Milky Way. So if, say, the Milky Way was a record album, that where the center is, where you'd place it on the record player, we're closer to that. Now, I have been a star watcher all my life, watched every show, huge Carl Sagan fan, knew exactly where I was in the universe. But now they tell me that's not where I am. What are you to do? What are we to do? How to manage this Mandela effect when we're presented with evidence that is outside of our memory? It is real for the people who are experiencing it. If there are cases where we can prove mismemory, then fine. A person made a mistake. But when you show me the Coca-Cola logo and tell me that there never used to be a dash in between the middle, that it's always been this weird little mark above the A in cola, I'm going to say, no, it's not how I remember it.
Right. And I think, and so many people like that. What is interesting, and I'll have to try to find one of my listeners, and if you're listening right now, send me the picture again. I can't find it. Send me a picture. They have an old Ford key. And it's not that little curly Q design on the middle part of the F that nobody remembers that. They remember kind of the nice little swoopy F, and then it's been replaced with like this curly Q in the middle of the F. And he's got a key that's not
very manly.
No, and then the new and his key has a totally different design on it altogether. So is that a remnant? Is it an anomaly? It's strange either way. So check it out. You guys, if you've got your own weird aspects of the Mandela effect that we haven't discussed, I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Point me to those as well. All right. Laurie MacDonald, our guest. I know our time is going to fly by here. I want to get into some of these other aspects. There's a lot of concern that what CERN was doing with their collider was that they may be ripping some kind of hole in time and space and causing this strange ripple effect. What do you make of that kind of idea and science? Now, that starts to go into the conspiratorial realm and the weird theories, but is there anything that backs that possibility that you've been able to uncover?
Well, CERN, first off, invented the internet. So they know how to think big. They're already operating the world's largest particle collider, and the idea is to just, smash these particles. They're trying to recreate what happened right after the Big Bang Theory and trying to explain the dimensions that way. So they're way ahead of schedule, by the way. They have a schedule, and they're going to go for an even higher amount of particle collisions this November before they close down in December for their break. But it's absolutely ridiculous. So is it possible that at such speeds, with such major collision, that they did tear a rip in between two dimensions? That actually could happen. We would see a convergence of the two energies. There would be a bit of a bleed through, like drawing your finger through two ripples in a pond. Mm-hmm. So right there's a blending or a converging. But we also see, too, though, that CERN might just want to take the responsibility for doing this, and that they would like to propagate any weird conspiracy theories for whatever attention this brings them. But one of their lead scientists in the video that he made sat there with the word Mandela on a sign hanging around his neck. They put all of these clues in their literature. They have, like, you can go and visit CERN. You can take a tour of CERN, and you can show up there, and they hand you a little passport. It's like a little map of where you go. And it's kind of like right in your face. They have Darth Vader, a little cartoon of Darth Vader to show the dark matter. They have a little mirror on the wall. They have the mirror and like the queen looking into it to express some other reflective thing. It's just right in your face. They know about the Mandela Effect. This little passport that they have, it's just rude. And so they either are responsible or they want us to think that they are. Can there be, shifting timelines and parallel universes? Most naturally, there is a flexing of the universe. It's quite probable when we look at the M theory in math. It's bringing all of the string theories together. And it does indicate parallel universes. And is that so hard for us to believe? Maybe not. We can really see that there is a slight frequency change, like going from one radio station to the next. So even right in the same room, right beside you, there could be a whole other universe with the same depth of the three-dimensional world running right beside us without us being aware of it. They're just that one channel off where it comes in real clear for them. So could you flux back and forth? That could happen. We've done a lot of things and so that is very possible that CERN did create that and created a shift in the timelines. And if that's true, we know that CERN's been involved in a lot of controversial experiments right back from the 1950s. I mean, now every major country in the world is rushing to create an even larger particle collider. China's building one. Russia's building one. They're building them possibly because they can open or create a portal between the two worlds. Why do we need all of these other countries creating these particle colliders? It's just nonsensical. So there is something going on. And if you haven't seen the opening ceremony to the tunnel that they made for CERN, I think that it is mind-blowing. It is absolutely shocking and appalling. I watched it with my mouth wide open, just could not believe it was blatant satanic ritualism and unbelievable. And this was their opening, this multi-billion-dollar company with tens of thousands of scientists. This is the opening to their new tunnel. It was ridiculous. Did you see it?
I did not, no.
Yeah, you might want to Google or YouTube the opening to the CERN tunnel. Absolutely satanic. And I'm not kidding. I'm talking about a goat coming down with horns and angels flying down in a fight, and all just major symbolism. It was outlandish, to say the very least. But why would they go through this and continue letting people think? You think that they're responsible for this. Why would their scientists be holding signs up that say Mandela? And the other sign, I believe, says number or hashtag Bond. And I believe that the actor's last name was Nelson or something. And so he's really showing a sign that says Nelson Mandela with a little clue in it. So this is what they're spending their money on at CERN.
That's very bizarre.
Lots of very interesting videos.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that and revisit with it. Talk to me about your research into registered trademarks and patents regarding the Mandela Effect.
Well, yes, they're absolutely contradictory. I mean, we'll have a product like Febreze, like I mentioned, and it'll show two different things. It'll show that the product was originally patented and then registered as a product of Procter & Gamble, which that spelling changed in Procter. And then the spelling in Febreze changes from F-E-B-R-E-E-Z-E to just the one E, which really is Febreze. So it doesn't make any sense. I believe that the commercials used to show like some clothing line, and there's some type of sea breeze, hence the name Breeze, right? A fresh breeze was kind of what I always assumed it was shortened for. But now we do see that there was actually patent numbers for that. So that's where it's changing. So I do get lots of information. Logopedia is pretty good too, if you want to search a logo to see what years they changed and what changes were made, if they were rebranded and when that happened. So you certainly want to rule things out. Not everything that changes, obviously, is a Mandela effect. But Kit Kat was one of the ones that I found, and we did find the images and text on that one, and it did have a dash.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, Kit Kat did have a dash. At least okay. At least there's some evidence.
Well, it makes me wonder if they would trademark both versions so that some other company couldn't try to skate in and use Cat. And, if you trademark both versions but only release one, I wonder if that's maybe what they end up doing in some of these cases.
Well, I don't know if that's necessary for them to do. The laws are pretty clear in copywriting, and Kit Kat is their name, and with or without the dash. But some of the changes that we're seeing, we do see that there's evidence that support both ways. Like you were saying, Sex and the City for Sarah Jessica Parker. I mean, there's video of David Letterman hosting the Grammys or whatever award show it is. That's not my forte, the award shows, but I did find it in my research, several of them saying that Sarah Jessica Parker won for Best Actress on that TV show, Sex in the City. And so I've ordered, I knew they used to have a Sex in the City perfume, and I ordered Sex in the City perfume online, screenshotted in the city, and it came in the mail, and the label on the bottle is "and." So
very strange.
I mean, is it misremembering, or is there really a possibility of a fluxing in the timelines? There were ancient prophecies that said this would happen. Ancient prophecies that say there'll come a time where words will change on the paper that they're written on, and things won't be what you remember. And so the idea is to remember with your heart or something like that. But to remember, and trust yourself. That was kind of the idea I got to, was to hold strong in your own beliefs and not be tricked by things changing, and could the change be nefarious? So much is possible. And you would hate to think that anyone or anything could have that kind of power. But, I just came back from Asia, and I was all through Southeast Asia. I was there for 3 months. One of the things that I noticed, no matter where I was, no matter how poor the family was, whether they lived in thatch-roofed hutches, they had cell phones. And they were just as buried in a cell phone as the Western world was. So all over the world, people are subjecting themselves to different forms of low-level radiation and alpha waves and Gwen waves and a multitude of other waves that I can assure you directly affect your brain waves, creating emotional feelings or behavioral modification in a person. And you see them become irritated, and then the phone will soothe them. We've got some issues here. Sure, we should be able to have, media, but why can't we leave our house now without a device of some sort? So maybe they did brainwave the population, and they want everybody to believe something because it's all, maybe they were trying to cover up one big catastrophe that they don't want anyone to remember. There's lots of theories. I don't know which is true.
Are there any chances that these alternate timelines are going to collapse into one another that you're aware of? Is this something that people should have a concern for?
Well, when it collapses, the consciousness just rolls forward. And so there's really no end. It's the same, but only slightly different. The consciousness, say, the Dave on, say, the parallel universes are a loaf of bread, and each slice is a different parallel universe. The two of the furthest points away are going to be the most different, but the ones right next to each other, if the one did collapse, they're going to roll, the energy is going to roll into the next parallel universe, creating that flux or the converging, that therefore resulting in a change in reality, a change in our history. The big Mandela effect that really had me just shocked was, of course, the Kennedy assassination and how many people were in the car. And when I remembered, and just based on my memory, I did only remember 4.
Right, yeah.
And I know now that they
had quite a few. What was it, total of 6 people in there? Yeah.
But the old wax museum that has a replica of everything, right down to Jackie O's Chanel suit, has the car, and it is a car for 4 people. And I know that the listeners out there are very smart, and they do their research too, and they're going to say, yeah, they had those jump seats that, pull down off the back of the 2 front seats, and you can fit 2 more extra people in there, but that wasn't that type of vehicle that was displayed. Even the reenactment, that was done by different law enforcement offices. They used 4 people in the car. So I thought that was very strange, but there's a lot, you look at the evidence now, and if you really slow down that video, you see that Jackie does something that I don't remember doing, and it's kind of like she has the president's head pulled forward. She reaches up under his chin, and then you see her put something behind the seat before she crawls over. And I always remember seeing his head recoiling backwards. and then her sort of scrambling over the back of the vehicle as she was trying to exit. So that footage looked different to me for multiple reasons, but could it have happened two different ways in two different realities? You know, the answer to that really is yes. You know, all science is pointing to that that's a possibility. And even the spiritual world has said that, you know, we are just a fragment of the greatest power, you know, experiencing the third dimensional reality and in a physical body, so that then eventually we'll all reabsorb back into the one whole God or whatever. So, you know, maybe it's just the experience of the multiverse is changing. They say that the human's experience changes where your heart is. People used to think it was the chest area, but a little to the left. It's not where your heart is. If you ask somebody to put their hands on their kidneys, a lot of times people are going to reach around their waist, place their hands there, and indicate, you know, sort of below the rib cage that that's where their kidneys are. That is not where your kidneys are. That's what I used to think. Believe that's what I learned. And so there's all of these enormous changes, you know, iconic lines in movies, and Sally Fields not having an S on the end of her name, and, you know, McDonald's or MacDonald's, the Coke logo. Those are changes that are going to get your attention if you're awake. You're not even going to be noticed if you're unaware to begin with. But the bigger things are things like, you know, geography, the panhandle of Florida, you know, used to sort of point, people would say at like, it came around and it pointed at like at 7:00, and now it's pointing closer down to 6:00. They say the panhandle's changed, and I'm actually one of those people that remembers a small, not that small, but a smaller sized island to the west of Australia. And when I was in the 4th grade in Canada, we had an exchange student teacher come, and the teacher said that she had lived in the United Kingdom but was marrying somebody from Australia. She showed us this island. She showed us Papua New Guinea and New Zealand. And I remember this island, and so exactly where the island was, there's nothing there on any of our maps, except that some of my research showed an old black and white TV show, and there's a globe in it, and you can see that the island is there. So it's actually also the same place where the Malaysia airline was last spotted. So I guess, I don't know if that's a coincidence, but a coincidence just means where 2 points meet. So, there's lots of changes, and, you know, sure, yes, people are going to have a memory mistake now and then, but when you see like you said, you know, people want to throw you remembering, you know, challenging their memory. That's not normal. That's not normally what we would do. But I think the people who are not affected by the Mandela Effect are like, what is, you know, no, that's never, you know, been the way you're saying. And they do seem more rigid. So I think where the work needs to be done is we need to have a look at who is affected, who has alternate beliefs, what are their spiritual beliefs, what are they pushing the boundaries of reality already? Are they, you know, what are they interested in? What makes them different? So that's probably something that's going to, I don't know if we'll have any volunteers, but
right. I
think that that's something that needs to be done to find out why that might be, why people are so adamant about the Mandela Effect.
Well, Laurie, I appreciate your time this evening. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and spending a little time Love to visit with you again in the future. And I want to thank everybody out there for listening into the show. And send me your emails. If you've had a strange Mandela effect, you've got a memory that you know happened, something, and it doesn't even have to be celebrity related. It could be like the woman we spoke about at the beginning of the show who was the person at work that gets all of the sympathy cards and birthday cards, and she has a very vivid memory of something that took place personally in her life. I'd love to hear your stories. Email them to me, dave@darknessradio.com. I'll be at the Edge Life Expos and events this weekend. I hope that you'll come on out and check it out here in the Twin Cities. It's going to be a great conference, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on. Plus, I'll be a speaker at the conference this weekend. It's going to take place Friday or Saturday and Sunday this weekend at the Earl Brown Heritage Center in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. So you can get information. Check out edgelife.net, November 11th and 12th, Minneapolis Edge Life Expo. And I'll be one of the speakers on hand and talking about what our past will teach us about our future. What can we glean? What are the spirits saying about our current condition in the world? That's what we'll be discussing during my talk, and you can get tickets for that still. So check out edgelife.net. We'll be back tomorrow. We have a very special guest joining us, and this is a two-parter, guys. This is pretty interesting, and why I wanted to bring this guest on. First of all, he's entertaining and he's fun to chat with. Anson Williams, our favorite nerd from TV's Happy Days, will join me. And he's going to talk to us about his mother, who was a very powerful and well-known psychic and medium. He'll also talk about his near-death experience and something that he's helped create along with Dr. Heimlich that is saving lives, and especially for the people in our community that are late-night owls and looking for safe ways to do a few things. I don't want to trigger too much. I want you to just tune in tomorrow and hear it. But I think tomorrow's show could save some serious lives, and especially for those of you over-the-road truckers that listen to the show and late-night drivers, please make sure to check out tomorrow's show for fun, for entertainment, for the paranormal, and for a new life-saving piece of news that you guys have to hear. That's it. We'll be back again tomorrow. For Tim Dennis, I'm Dave Schrader. This is Beyond the Darkness.